Hello children, welcome to story time. I'm going to begin reading one of my favourite stories. It's called The Twits by one of my favourite authors, Roald Dahl. Have any of you read any Roald Dahl books? If you have, let me know. Now then children, look at this picture very carefully. This is Mr. Twit and he's a very hairy-faced man. Look at it carefully. The whole of his face, except for his forehead, his eyes and his nose, are covered in thick hair. The stuff even comes out of his nostrils and his ear holes. Mr. Twit has felt that his hairiness makes him look very wise and very grand, but in truth he was neither of these things. Mr. Twit was a twit. He was born a twit, and now at the age of 60 he was a bigger twit than ever. The hair on Mr. Twit's face didn't grow smooth and matted as it does on most hairy-faced men. It grew in spikes that stuck out straight like the bristles of a nail brush. And how often did Mr. Twit wash this bristly nail-brushy face of his? The answer is never, not even on Sundays. Mr. Twit hadn't washed his hairy face for years and years. Now, as you know, an ordinary unhairy face like yours or mine simply gets a little bit dirty here and there if it's not washed very often, and there's nothing awful about this. But a hairy face is a very different matter. Things get stuck in the hair, especially food. Things like gravy go right in among the hairs and stay there. You and I can wipe our faces with a towel and it's back to normal, but a man with a beard, a very hairy face, can't do that. We can also, if we're very careful, eat our meals without spreading them all over our faces, but not the hairy man. Watch carefully next time you see a hairy man eating his lunch, and you'll notice that even if he opens his mouth very wide, it's impossible for him to get a spoonful of soup or ice cream or chocolate sauce into it without leaving some of it on his hairs. Mr. Twit didn't even bother to open his mouth wide when he ate. As a result, there were hundreds and hundreds of bits of old breakfast and lunches and suppers sticking to the hairs around his face. They weren't big bits, mind you, because he used to wipe those off with the back of his hand or on his sleeve while he was eating. But if you looked very closely, you would see tiny little specks of dried up scrambled eggs stuck to his hairs, and spinach and tomato ketchup and fish fingers and minced chicken livers and all the other disgusting things Mr. Twit liked to eat. Now, children, look very closely at this picture. And if you look deep into the moustachy bristles sticking out over his upper lip, you will probably see much larger objects that had escaped the wipe of his hand. Things that had been there for months and months, like a piece of maggoty green cheese, or a mouldy old cornflake, or even the slimy tail of a tin sardine. Because of all this, Mr. Twit never went really hungry. By sticking out his tongue and curling it sideways to explore the hairy jungle around his mouth, he was always able to find a tasty bit of food here and there to nibble on. What I am trying to tell you is that Mr. Twit was a foul and smelly old man. He was also an extremely horrid man, as you're going to find out very soon. That's the end of our story time today. Next time we're going to find out all about Mrs. Twit. I wonder what she's like.